Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sportsbook Confidential here at the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. My name is John Sullivan, and this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we have an interesting show for you today. We're going to have a sportsbook lesson about qualitative handicapping and what that's all about. And I'm going to spend a few minutes reviewing the Action documentary on Showtime. It was a 4-part series about sports betting, and I have quite a few comments about that. And then we're going to talk about Friday Night Baseball and Friday and Saturday NHL playoffs. So hopefully we'll have some good picks for you. But as we always do when we start our show, we start by reviewing last week's bets and updating our bankroll. And finally moving in the right direction. You can see we started with $473 in our bankroll. And on Friday night, we had the Mariners loss against the Astros, and that was minus $16. And the Brewers won for us, and that was a profit of $21. And we had the Vegas Golden Knights on Friday, also won for a profit of $18. And then we also finally had the Bruins, I believe that was Saturday, minus 1.5 goals, a win for us. A profit of $30. So if you do the math, I believe that's a net gain of $53. That puts us at $526. Nice over 10% jump of the bankroll in 1 week there. And dividing by 30, as we always do, because we're selective bettors, our new bet size is going to be $18 going forward. So today's sportsbook lesson, we are going to talk about qualitative handicapping. And what is qualitative? What does it mean? Qualitative means as described by words as opposed to being described by numbers. So obviously if you say qualitative, you're describing something that is, fat, juicy. Use any adjective you want to describe something, a word to describe it, as opposed to a number. If I say that the Yankees are half a run favorite over the Kansas City Royals, then that's using a number to describe something, and something we can quantify. We have a mathematical means to come to that conclusion. Qualitative factors cannot usually be quantified or represented by stats. So we've talked a little bit about that already. So what you're doing is you're trying to find information. If you boil it down, you're trying to find information that can help you make a decision on the outcome of an event, and finding things that are so-called, for me, I say kind of between the cracks, because as a math guy, I have my model, but then there's other factors I look at when I'm deciding whether to pop a wager on a certain game or not. So there are qualitative factors in every game, although sometimes they are not easily found. And we'll just talk really quickly. We'll have examples in just a moment. But what I'm trying to say here is a lot of times these qualitative factors will show themselves in-game as opposed to before the game starts. And I'll go through examples of this, but it's not, when you find information that is is actionable, that you can use to make a decision, it's always it feels like found money kind of, because you don't always have that information at your fingertips. So let's look at qualitative examples. Off the field factors affecting player performance, and I'm going to one common factor that you may consider is a certain player, a key player. Say he's having a baby and he needs to be with his the baby's mother for the birth of the baby or something like that. That can affect the game. That's something that is not always easily quantified. Although some people that have sophisticated models can easily run a simulation with that player removed. But the best example I can think of, best recent example I can think of is Robin Lehner, who's the goalie for the New York Islanders. And last year he was the goalie for the Buffalo Sabres, and he had a very poor year. And he struggled, and he was out of sorts, and he seemed like a total bust. And it turned out during the off season that he was undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and he was also abusing drugs and alcohol. But during the off season, he got himself medicated correctly and is sober, and he's had a fantastic year for the Islanders. And you can see when he plays that he's very even-keeled. He doesn't get emotional like he used to, almost never. And that's something that a model cannot quantify for you. Now, he's had a full season with the Islanders, so if you discount his previous work as a goalie with other teams, that is going to show his level of performance. But at the beginning of the season, before all those stats had accumulated, if you were betting the Islanders when he was playing, you were getting very good numbers, and you may have made several units of profit off that information because it wasn't reflected in the stats. You were expecting a guy that was going to give up 3 goals a game instead of 2 goals a game. So that's a classic example of a qualitative factor that is not represented in numbers. Now, another example is decision-making involving in-game play. And my recent example of this would be the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Rams. And the Rams, if you watched them during the season, you knew that Sean McVay, the head coach, would talk to the quarterback, even though the quarterback, if you're familiar with how the radios work in the NFL, up until there's 15 seconds left on the play clock, the quarterback can talk to the other person on the sideline, and they can talk back and forth on their radios. But after that, it's only communicating one way. It can go from the sideline to the quarterback. So the quarterback is still getting information from the sideline while he's up, ready to snap the ball. And what was happening was the Patriots prepared for that by changing their looks on almost every play. They would have a look at 15 seconds, and then they would change their defense around in the last 15 seconds. And it was causing confusion for the Rams. And I'm not the only person who probably was yelling at their TV that bet on the Rams that was saying, why don't you run a hurry-up offense? Then that won't allow the Patriots to do their multiple defense looks and snap the ball quickly and use that advantage to move the ball. And it was a very defensive game. And apparently the Rams just chose not to move away from their game plan. And they did not use Todd Gurley, who was supposedly healthy. We'll never really know for sure, I guess, if he was or not. But they used him very sparingly. And it was, now that information is very actionable in the game, after the game has started. So if you're live betting during the game, which is something I do not do, I bet full games, sides and totals, and I just kind of stay away from live betting. But that's actionable information. If you see the coach is refusing to make this adjustment, well then you see that the Patriots have an advantage going forward there. And then finally you have the obvious thing is weather and injuries, and it's not always an outdoor situation. And a really good example of this was last night. The Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes. I watched that whole game last night. And the ice in Raleigh was really bad. It was really choppy. And Carolina had a much better handle on the ice conditions. And it basically, gave them the win. And in the back of your head, you wonder, did they do that on purpose? Or did they not prepare the ice correctly because there was another event, the circus was in town or whatever, or they just didn't account for having 19,000 people in their arena, that was making the ice spoil more quickly or was not prepared correctly. It makes you wonder, but boy, I know for a fact that the next game, the Capitals will be playing at home and they'll make sure the ice is just the way they like it. So again, that's a field condition that is not always represented in the stats because the ice is not usually like that in Carolina. It just was because of either the weather or on purpose or whatever. So And of course, injuries. Some models can account for injuries and some can't. What you often will do is, if you make a wager with a nice value to it before the injury is announced, you can just, buy yourself out of the wager by betting the other side, or adjust for whatever reason so you can get out of that risk. But you need to be aware of player changes. How coach decision making, how coaches choose to use their timeouts. That's not reflected in models. Things like that will help you handicap games. We'll probably talk a lot more about that during football season. But I think, watching that game last night, I was like, wow, this is something we need to talk about. And I hope you found that somewhat helpful. And that's going to wrap up our sportsbook lesson today. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of all the games this weekend, Friday and Saturday, want to take a few minutes here to talk about the action docuseries that just finished on Showtime for the last 4 weeks. They had a 1-hour episode every Sunday night, and I'm sure you can catch it on demand if that's something you're into. It was interesting. Every time there is a sports betting documentary, there have been several over the last, I want to say 7-8 years. They're mostly been feature films. And this one is a 4-hour docuseries, and it chronicled mostly over-the-counter betting in Las Vegas. Now, the premise of the series is sports betting has been federally legalized. It has to be legalized state by state, but the states have control over whether sports betting will be legal, and we expect it here in New York State very soon, maybe as early as Memorial Day, but definitely by the time football rolls around. So that's how they began it, but they spent most of their time in Las Vegas, the majority in the South Point Casino, which is one of the more sports betting friendly casinos in Las Vegas, which is also the home of the VSIN studio, VSIN, I guess they call it, the Brett Musburger sports betting channel that's on satellite radio. So the main characters were Bill Krakenberger, known as Crackman, Kelly in Vegas, Kelly Stewart, Vegas Dave, Dave Wansha, and Todd Wishnev, who is an amateur sports bettor. It's not he's not a pro bettor. He's in the sports book every day, but he was their, happy-go-lucky, degenerate bettor, so to speak, and really the most interesting character of the four. But let me talk about each one very quickly. Bill Krakenberger, he may be a professional bettor, but he is not a handicapper. He uses a quant. He has a team. So when you see him betting on the show, you have to remember in the back of your head that he's splitting those profits with other people. I don't know how much money he's making, but he says in the very first episode, I couldn't name more than 10 players in the National Football League. So it really distraught to find out that he's actually launched his own app and is going to be selling picks, for $500 a season or whatever he's charging. And you're going to take picks from somebody who can't name 10 players in the National Football League. I would highly recommend avoiding that like the plague. But we saw him, he's widely considered in the sports betting community to be a nice guy, and I don't think there's any disputing that. I don't think he's a hostile man, even though he blocked me on Twitter. But they show him to be a nice guy, an unemotional, bettor. He's not tied into the games. He doesn't really care about watching the games. And I believe that, I'm passionate about sports betting, and I believe there's value in watching the games. I watch games that I don't even bet on because they may unveil to me something that is actionable on a future game. So knowledge is power, in my opinion. So you take that for what it's worth. The guy's been around for a long time, and he knows how the betting markets work. But he's basically just a runner where he's going out and placing the bets for his team. And he's not the guy that is telling, he's not the guy that's deciding what number is that they want to bet on. His quant does that, and he just goes out and completes a transaction. So take that for what you will. It was, he was interesting. Not somebody that I would even consider, buying a pick from. Whenever he talks, he's on the VSIN network about once a week, and he always talks about the sports betting lifestyle, and he never talks about actual betting. He never talks about what bets over others, what numbers over others. He just talks about what it's like to be a sports bettor and what his lifestyle is like. And, that's just fluff. It doesn't mean anything. I try to give you actionable information here every Friday. I try to give you a lesson, a tidbit that you can take with you and you can use going forward, and I feel like that's what the sports betting industry needs. There's going to be a lot more sports betting programming coming out, and a lot of it is really not that good right now. Kelly, speaking of sports betting industry, media industry, Kelly in Vegas, Kelly Stewart, a former tout who is now, she calls herself a professional handicapper, but she's more of a sports betting media personality. And she is somebody who has getting a lot of experience on television and streaming media. She has been with Wager Talk for about a year, which is a tout site, as a video host. She was previously on Fox Sports 1 as a gambling analyst, and now she is on CBS Sports HQ, which is an app. If you can stream it on all your streaming devices and on your computer and in your phone, it's kind of like ESPN News. They have 24-hour scores and highlights, and then they have shows in between, like betting shows. And she's on there handicapping games and giving. She does not sell picks. She gives her opinions on games, but she does not sell picks, and she does not keep records. And throughout the show, they say, well, she knows her stuff and she can talk a good game. I agree she can talk a good game. I don't feel like she knows as much as people think she does, but she knows more than the average person. And she states in the show that her goal is to, be on a big network, like a network football program. And, who knows, maybe that'll come to fruition for her, but, this show was a stepping stone for her. It's all about getting an agent and getting on a bigger platform. And she does bet some games, and they show her betting games. But they don't really show her when she loses. They showed her at a birthday party, and she won a Cowboys bet. And then, she lost money on the Super Bowl, but they don't really go to they don't really cover that very much. They give her like one sentence, and that's about it. Vegas Dave, what can we say about Vegas Dave that hasn't already been said? Vegas Dave is a scam artist. He is being sentenced in May for Social Security fraud with filing fake Social Security numbers, which he claims they were only off 1 or 2 digits. He didn't say anything about intent, though. He is a tout. He sells picks for $500 a piece, and you see him on the show, people buying his picks, and you see, I think, all of his picks but one lose. And, he says he wins 75% of the time, which is total hooey. And they show him, at his house, his parents' house, and his villa, and he's never with anybody. He has one friend for the Super Bowl, I think, or the conference finals. And he spends most of his time with his parents and their dog. And he does have a lot of money, but his family has a lot of money. And he is a good marketer. He markets himself very well, but he is a scam artist. Don't ever buy picks from him. And he is universally loathed in the sports betting industry. And there's no question they had him on because he's a polarizing figure. But he believes in himself so much that, he actually hires a biographer, and they interview the biographer, and he gives a very interesting analysis of Dave there. And then Todd Wishnev, the fellow they found in the sports book, they were not even going to have him on the show, but he was so engaging, and he has a gregarious personality, and he makes everybody around him smile. And, win or lose, he seems to have a lot of fun in the sports book. And he really embodies what a lot of people enjoy about sports betting. They love the sweat. He says, he's been interviewed a few times, and he says, I love the puzzle of sports betting, the mathematical puzzle of predicting which team is going to win. And that really sums up what I like about sports betting. And this fella does make a good living doing, working in the financial industry. He doesn't rely on sports betting for his income. And it is something he really enjoys. So you can't really give him the degenerate label, because, he's obviously, covering his expenses doing other things. But, you wonder, he doesn't furnish his apartment, and, he looks a little slovenly like I do. And, you wonder if it's a healthy obsession or not. That's kind of what they're trying to leave you with. But I found him to be wholeheartedly engaging, and I predict that if he wanted to, he could do something in the sports betting industry and leave the other stuff behind if that's really his passion. Certainly not touting, but being a liaison between the average sports bettor and the sports betting media. I think that's something where he would fit nicely. But overall, this documentary left us more questions than answers. I wonder if they did that on purpose to try and get a second season. They don't talk at all about offshore. They spent one episode. They talked about DFS, but they didn't mention that the two brothers they talked about worked together in DFS to circumvent the rules, which I could go all day on about, but they made it a small part of the documentary, so I won't really talk about that. But, most people that are really good, the best, I would say the top 10% sports bettors in the world, which I'm not, will not openly talk about their sports betting because they don't want to give away any edges. And that's, it's hard for somebody in the documentary biz to get somebody like that to open up. They could barely get the bookie to open up, the illegal bookie, to open up about his business. But, sports betting, as it comes out into the open, more and more people are going to understand how the sports books try to take advantage of new customers, and we're going to, we're going to help you with that. And you have to make smart decisions, and it's going to save you a lot of money. So even if you're doing sports betting for entertainment, and you realize that you're not likely to win, we're going to give you some simple rules to use to help your money last longer, and you can enjoy your sweat. So that's all I have to say about action today. Very interesting. It was worth the watch. I think there's a movie called The Best of It that came out a couple years ago, and you can find that on Hulu. And I think that's the better of the two as far as documentaries go. But we'll talk about that another day. So on to Major League Baseball Friday, and we've got a full schedule of games. I'm going to go through these really quickly, and then we'll talk about hockey. This afternoon, we got the Diamondbacks, plus 154 at the Cubs, favored by 0.1 runs, minus 157. Now, that would make me lean towards taking the Diamondbacks at that nice number, but not the best choice on the board today. Giants, minus 111 at Pirates, favored by 0.3 runs, as my model says. That number is what my model has for these teams. Pirates at plus 102. That could be on our list. It's obviously a play. You're getting plus money on a team that's favored. Nationals favored by 1.5 runs, minus 112 at the Marlins, plus 104. This would make me want to take the Nationals on the run line, minus 1.5. Dodgers minus 108 at Brewers, even. My model has this as a coin flip game, plus 100. It's lined like a coin flip game, so we'll just pass. Mets plus 138 at the Cardinals, favored by 1.33 runs, minus 150. Again, you want to maybe take that on the minus 1.5. Phillies plus 128 at Rockies, favored by a tenth of a run. That's almost a coin flip, minus 139. So, yeah, that's another example where you would lean towards the Phillies, but you're getting a better number on that other game, so we'll pass on that. The Reds favored by 0.37 runs, plus 114 at the Padres, minus 124. The Reds' bats are starting to wake up. They won last night. They are in the middle of a long road trip, though. Maybe if that number was a little better. But, yeah, you've got plus money on a favorite there. So, Twins favored by 1.33 runs, minus 177. At the Orioles, plus 163. Not much value there, and you can see the Orioles are not getting that crazy plus 200 money that they were getting. So the lines for the Orioles are starting to go down. They're realizing that they're not going to be historically bad as they were predicted early in the season. Royals plus 157 at Yankees. Yankees favored by 0.4 runs, minus 171. Not really any value there. White Sox favored by 0.3 runs, plus 100 at Tigers. Minus 109. So you've got the White Sox, you would like to see a little more there than plus 100. So not really the best value on the board. Red Sox plus 107 at Rays, favored by 0.87 runs, minus 116. My rule is if it's over a run, if they're favored by over a run, then I look to play it on the run line. You could probably get good value on the run line there, but I'm not sure I want to go that route. Astros favored by 1.83 runs. There you go. Minus 215 at the Rangers, plus 200. There's not value on this game. You're getting, if you take the Astros minus 1.5, you're only getting like minus 130. So Mariners favored by almost half a run there, plus 106 at the Angels, minus 115. Once again, if I was like 116 instead of 106, I'd probably be on that. Blue Jays plus 117 at the Oakland A's, favored by 0.57 runs, minus 127. That's pretty good value right there. That's a pretty good number for being favored by that much. But I think there's better value on the board. And the Braves plus 118 at the Indians, favored by 0.83 runs, minus 128. Once again, good value. But I think I can get better numbers for the games I want to play. So we'll see what the picks are in a moment. But before we get to those, we're going to look at the Friday and Saturday games in the National Hockey League. So we've got the Maple Leafs at the Bruins. I like the Bruins in this series. Let's see, we're doing on time here. We got a couple minutes left. I like the Bruins. I feel like the Bruins have the advantage in goaltending. The Bruins have the advantage on defense, and I feel like the Leafs have the advantage. They have like 3 good scoring lines as opposed to 2 for the Boston Bruins. But overall, I feel like that favors the Bruins. I like them at home tonight, even at minus 140. I feel like this is a chance for them to get a stranglehold on the series. Avalanche at the Flames. This is a game that's very difficult to handicap. I was very surprised that the Flames went with Mike Smith as their goaltender, and he started all the games for them, and he did not have a great year. And Rittich, their other goalie, was much better this year, and it'll be interesting to see if Smith goes tonight. But must-win game for the Flames, down 3-1. Not much value on that unless you feel like the Avalanche have this wrapped up. And then tomorrow we have the Hurricanes at the Capitals. I feel like this is my backup the money truck play. I don't give out locks, but I'm going to be on the Capitals. I talked about the bad ice in Carolina and Capitals getting back in their building, and that should give them some energy. I feel like Tom Wilson has been a little underwhelming in this series, and Ovechkin has been the one throwing around the big checks and being the agitator. You need Ovechkin to do Ovechkin things and Tom Wilson to do Tom Wilson things. So look for him to get nasty tonight or tomorrow night. And I like Carolina. I like Washington to take the lead in that series. The Jets at the Blues. The visiting team has won every game in this series, but the Blues can wrap it up at home, up 3-2. Binnington has been the better goalie. I feel like the Blues will win this series, although I don't know if it's going to be this game or the next game. And then the Stars are the Predators, and I feel like there's really good value on the Stars here because the Predators have some injuries and their goaltending has not been that great. Rene is, he's been this kind of goalie his whole career. He'll have 3 or 4 stellar games, and then he just crapped out in Game 4. It was a 5-1 Stars win. He got pulled. He gave up 3 in the first. He always has that blow-up game, and you have to see how he'll come back from that. The Preds will have the home crowd, but the Stars, are kind of feeling it. So I think there's good value on the Stars here, but that's not going to be my play. So to wrap everything up today, let's take a look at my picks. And we've got the Nationals tonight, -1.5 runs at Florida, at Miami, plus 149. Great number there. Would love to see a big win there. And then the Cardinals against the Mets, they got a really good pitching matchup. Vargas versus Wainwright, -1.5 at home, plus 127. And then in hockey, on Friday night, I'm taking the Bruins money line. It's Tuukka time, Tuukka Rask, -140 on the money line. And then Saturday, I'm down with the Capitals. I think they're going to take that series. So Capitals at home, -133. And that's our show for today. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And we'll have another episode for you next week. So I'm going to play the outro music for you. And thanks for watching. Let's get some winners. Take care, everybody.